You're inside a metal coffin. That's what tank crews in World War II called their vehicles. And they weren't exaggerating. When a Sherman tank got hit, the crew had seconds to escape before it became their tomb. This is the brutal reality of tank warfare that Hollywood never shows you. Picture this. You're crammed inside a steel box with 4 other men. The commander's feet are literally on the radio operator's shoulders. The loader is sitting on top of the commander. You can barely move. The engine roars so loud you need internal radio just to hear each other scream. And it's not just uncomfortable, it's hell. Temperatures inside tanks in North Africa reached unbearable levels. Crews urinated into spent shell casings because there was nowhere else to go. Severe constipation was so common it became an expected part of tank life. But the real nightmare started when enemy fire found you. At the Battle of Kursk in July 1943, the largest tank battle in history, over 7,000 Soviet tanks were destroyed. That's 7,000 metal boxes turned into death traps. When an armor-piercing shell penetrated a tank, it didn't just punch through. It sent white-hot metal fragments ricocheting inside the crew compartment at supersonic speeds. Tankers called it the splash effect. Men were killed instantly by shrapnel they never saw coming. And then there was fire. 40% of destroyed tanks in World War II caught fire. But here's the terrifying part. Those burning tanks accounted for 50% of all crew casualties. When a Sherman's fuel tank was hit, the crew had maybe 10 seconds before the interior became an inferno. The statistics are chilling. In tanks that burned, 1.28 crew members died per tank. In tanks that didn't burn, 0.78. Fire was the difference between walking away and dying screaming. The Germans designed their tanks with individual hatches for each crew member. This meant Tiger and Panther crews often escaped even when their tank was burning. But early Sherman crews, the loader had no hatch of his own. He had to climb over dying men to escape through someone else's exit. Later models fixed this, and survival rates jumped dramatically. The Sherman actually became one of the best tanks for crew survival, with only 1.3 crew members killed per destroyed tank. Compare that to the Soviet T-34, which lost 2 crew members per tank destroyed. But survival wasn't just about design, it was about the crew. Tank commanders in World War II learned fast that trust was everything. Crews that fought with each other died together. In the cramped hell of a tank, rank disappeared. First names were used. Bonds formed that infantry soldiers couldn't understand. Because when an 88mm shell screamed toward your position, only your crew could save you. The driver had to react in milliseconds. The gunner had to return fire while the tank was moving. The loader had to keep feeding shells into the breach, even as enemy rounds slammed into the armor around him. One mistake, one hesitation, and everyone died. At the Battle of Prokhorovka, during Kursk, tank crews fought for hours in conditions that would break most men. Visibility was almost zero through the narrow vision slits. They were blind, deaf from the noise, and knew that every second could be their last. Here's what they don't tell you. Tank-on-tank combat was actually rare. Only 15% of engagements involved fighting other tanks. Most of the time, tank crews were getting hit by hidden anti-tank guns, mines, or infantry with rocket launchers. The Panzerfaust anti-tank rocket caused 1.6 crew casualties per tank hit. That's the highest of any weapon, because when a rocket penetrated, the explosion and fire happened simultaneously. American tankers had an 8% mortality rate in World War II. That sounds good until you realize infantry had 18%. But here's the catch. When a tanker died, he usually died with his entire crew. When your tank was hit in Normandy or North Africa or the Eastern Front, you didn't just lose one man. You lost a family. The men who slept under tarps together, who shared rations, who knew each other's voices in the dark. The 3rd Armored Division entered Normandy with 232 Sherman tanks. By the end of the war, They'd had 648 tanks completely destroyed. That's a 580% loss rate. They replaced every tank almost 6 times over. But tanks can be replaced. The men inside them couldn't.